Welcome to the Chicory's maintenance video series. Chicory is obviously hauled out right now, and the first thing I'm going to do is check the Cutless bearing clearance. I know it needs to be replaced, but I'm curious to see what the clearance is, and I'll test the new one when I'm done to see where that is as well, because that has a specification. But the very first thing I want to do is clean off some of these barnacles so that I have a area that I'm not going to cut myself or better to work with. So I'm going to do that right now. Okay, so now that I'm done with this, I'm going to build up some wood here so that I can get leverage on the nut. And I can lift the prop and shaft, and then I'm going to measure that between the prop and the bottom of the boat. You'll see in a second. So now that I have the wood stacked up, you can see that I can move this and I get my movement. I know that this is way over spec and it needs to be replaced, but I do want to test it and actually measure it, so I'm going to do that now. So I have a dial indicator on a flexible arm. So I have to figure out how I'm going to connect this. So now I got it at 0. $77,000. So obviously quite far out. I'm going to give you a zoom in of that now. So here's the close-up. I'm going to move it to 0 a little bit more, I guess. There we go. So we got it at 0. I'm going to push down on the lever. So we got it at 0. I'm going to put pressure on it. 78 thousandths of an inch. That's a lot of movement. Here. So the first thing I'm going to do is hold a cotter pad. Is just take a vice grips, clamp it on this side. Just so I have a surface to pound against, and then I'm just going to try and pound it out just a little bit. So it's out. Now I'm going to look at breaking loose these nuts. And I'm going to use this just to clean the threads just a little bit here. So the next step is to stop the prop from moving when I start to turn this. So that'll stop it from turning. It's a pretty small pipe wrench for this application, but like I said, it's my first day here and I'm just seeing what I can do. Oh, that was a whole lot easier than I thought it'd be. So I'm going to use the flat blade again just to clean this up. So the small nut goes in first because in reality the larger nut, once it loads the pressure on here, it's taking the pressure. A lot of people are confused and think this is like a jam nut, but whatever the furthest nut out is the one that is actually taking most of the load. That doesn't mean I'm thinking this one's going to be easy, but going to use my little tube again. Wow. Way easier than I thought it'd be. I'm going to leave this one on. Once again, I don't expect the prop to come off very easily. It's on a taper, but just in case it does, I don't want it going flying off. So I'm leaving the nut on there. Okay, I switched gears and now I'm in the lazarette. Here is my steering tiller. Here's the rudder post, and this is the clamping mechanism that goes around the rudder post. So I'm going to loosen this so that I can move the rudder to get the prop off when I do break it loose. You can see I have two stops here. The steering tiller doesn't go all the way to these stops, but once I take this off, I can swing the prop past those stops to the full extension where I can get the shaft out and the prop off, and you'll see that. But in the meantime, I'm just going to take these little ball fittings off so that my rudder angle indicators are disconnected. And then I'm going to break these loose. Now this is loose. Can move it out of the way, and the rudder can move independently on its own from down below. It's too cramped in here to shoot the footage of me actually taking this apart, so I'm just kind of going to give you a heads up. So this is the coupler to the shaft. You can see that there's two clamping mechanisms at the back with bolts. There's a through pin through the shaft, and then there's a lock clamp pressure along with a key. So I've got to remove all that so that I can get the prop out through the Cutless bearing. And so I'm going to work on that now, and I'll show you what it looks like afterwards. Okay, so I've just undone the coupling, and I'll show you what that looks like in a minute. But I just wanted to push the prop shaft out a little bit. And the reason I need to do that is I've got a puller here, which I hope will work, but it couldn't fit between the hull and the prop. So now I'm just going to try and see if this will fit in here. So the coupling is away from the transmission. So I don't think there's any harm in me using a steel bar and just giving it a little tap just to see if I can break something loose. I did it. Prop is off. Well, it's loose. So I'm back. I just was returning the prop pull. And so now I know it's really, the prop can only come off one way with the rudder, one way or another. I can't remember which way it is, but you're going to see me struggle here. So you can see that it was quite a bear getting that off because of clearance. Somewhere along the line, somebody put line cutters on here, which extended the shaft 2 inches, and now it's so hard to get off. But for right now, the top is off. I'm going to pull the shaft next. So the prop and shaft is out. This is where the Cutless bearing was. We're going to clean this all up. Obviously, there's tons of buildup on the shaft and see how we want to inspect it. Here you can see where the stuffing box gland material was, and there's a little bit of waviness. I'll have to see about this, but what I can do is I can shorten the hose that's on the stuffing box, which will move this packing material back like an inch or two, and it won't be riding on this surface if I were not to want to ride on the same surface. I don't think this is going to cause any leaking issues whatsoever. It looks like it's in good shape, but these are all things that I'm going to consider during the process. So the next step is on the next day, we start to pull the Cutless bearing. The Cutless bearing is right in here, and so extracting that will involve pulling out this set screw and then seeing how it is in there. I'm going to try and extract it with a puller, but I might have to cut it and bend it out. We'll see. But that's the next step until tomorrow. So I have the hose and the stuffing box off. You can see the gland, and let's see if you can focus. Yep, there you can see way down that tube is the Cutless bearing, and so I'm going to take a look at removing that now. So you saw that I took the stuffing box off and I showed you a picture of the stern tube where you could look down the stern tube and see the Cutless bearing. So I went down below and I took out the set screw that holds the Cutless bearing in place, and I tapped on it a little bit and it moved. So it doesn't seem like it's like glued in there. The previous person who put it in just pressed it in. I don't know if my scheme here is going to work, but here's what I'm going to try. I have a hydraulic ram system and I have these extension tubes, and I'm going to try and push the Cutless bearing from the inside of the boat and just push it out. So here's what I'm going to do. I keep on the boat some bearing tools. These are for installing bearings in housings. And normally how this works is you just unscrew this little handle, you put this on, and you can drive a bearing in by hitting it with a hammer. It happens to be that this aluminum piece is the exact size I need to press out the bearing. But I need to make sure that I can have these tubes kind of centered on this because I want to push straight out through the stern tube. So I was looking at the tools available here, and one of the things that they can push against this little rubber fitting that'll fit on the end of these tubes. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to set this on top like this, and I'm just going to take a number 12 screw and a 1/4 20 washer. I'm going to try and screw this to the center of this. So I got it screwed. Now I'm going to put the extensions on here, put the hydraulic ram in line with it, hook up the power source, and then I'm going to try and press it out, and I'll show you that once I get down in the engine room and get everything organized. So I'm showing you from this side, so you can see that there's the ram, there's the extension, and so I'm just going to pump this a little bit. And I think you can see that the ram is pushing the bearing out. I'm just going to keep doing that and then keep on putting the extensions in, which I'll show you. So I'm still just pushing this out. Now I'm back to the end of the stroke. So I'm going to grab the cylinder. I'm going to release the pressure. It's going to suck itself back in. And then I'm going to pull the cylinder out. Pull the extension out. And then I have a longer extension now, and even a longer one, so I can just keep on putting these extensions in, pushing it further, because I'm limited for the stroke for this. So I'm going to put this on here, which is the next step longer. I'm going to slide this in here, slide it into the existing shaft, and then I'm going to first I have to tighten the valve. There we go. Now everything's tight. Oh, it fell out the back. So it appears as if it's definitely out. Well, I have to tell you, that worked a whole lot better than I ever imagined. So I'm going to disassemble all this stuff. I'll go down in the rain one more time, grab the Cutless bearing and bring it up here, and I'll show you sort of the rest. All right, I have the Cutless bearing out, and I want to show you a couple things. This end, where you can see kind of the crud on there, and this drill hole is the back side. And this is the dimple that's in there for the set screw. So the set screw comes in from the side of the hull and buries into this that stops the movement both rotationally and axially. And so one of the things that's really interesting about this is normally when this is done, people use a hacksaw or a sawzall. They cut through this material and then they bend it inside, which destroys the Cutless bearing completely, and they just throw it aside. Because I was able to get this out in one piece, I can actually see the wear pattern pretty distinctively on both surfaces. And I'm going to take some measurements because I'll be able to know, I know the orientation because I have the back and I have the port side, right? So it looks like the starboard side aft has less wear than the port side aft. That might just be rotation or something, but I'm going to do a little research on that because it's interesting. It's more even wear than I expected, and I'm happy about it. And so the next step will be putting the Cutless bearing in, putting the shaft back in, putting the prop back on, putting the coupler back on. So my next step here, as you can see, there's a bunch of buildup on all of this hardware that I took off. So I'm just going to use some CLR and a scrub brush and a toothbrush to start with, get as clean as I can, and then I'm going to probably hit it with a some sort of wire bristle brush to get it up to perfect. So I'll show you after the next step. Okay, this is just an incremental update. So you can see pieces that I was able to soak completely in the CLR look fantastic. The ones that I brushed on CLR, you can see there's still some stuff left over. And this cleaned up pretty well, but still needs some work. So I'm going to use these wire bristle brushes and a drill to continue cleaning these items, and I'll show you when I'm done. So here's a look at the preliminary clean. I'm going to do a better job than this, but I just wanted to kind of show you halfway through cleaning everything up. that getting there. So I'm here with the Cutless bearing. New one, I'm going to insert it. Goes in here. Start it a little bit. I have a little piece of plywood. Okay, there you go. Okay, so the next step I have to do is right here is where the set screw goes. Here's the set screw. And you can see that on the old Cutless bearing, there's a little bit of a dimple here where this sets in and locks it into place. So I need to drill into the Cutless bearing just a little bit, just to put that dimple, but not to drill through. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to chuck my drill, and I'm going to take a piece of tape, and I'm going to put the drill bit in, and then I'm going to mark it for how deep I want to drill. Okay, so this is how far I want to drill into the hole. Now the second part of that is I don't want these side flutes on the drill bit that clear the chips to do anything with the threads inside there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little bit of a space so I can see where my mark is, but I'm going to use the tape and protect the flutes. Now this isn't going to clear chips very well, but I think I'm going to be able to blow that out pretty well. So here's the way my system is set up. I've got my mark for how deep it's going to go. I protected the flutes, and then here's just where I want to drill. Okay, that's about right. Okay, I think that's good. So now I'm going to thread the set in. Okay, that's locked in there. So now the Cutless bearing won't move. Next step is to put the shaft in. So the shaft is ready to go in. It's cleaned up, but right now the way it'll be, it'll give me some friction against the Cutless bearing. So I'm going to put a little bit of water on it. And I'm going to put a little bit of dishwashing soap as a lubricant. And because my hands are dirty, I'm going to clean my hands quickly. And then I'm just going to put a teeny bit of water in the Cutless bearing. There you go. And now we'll put the shaft in. Okay, so we have the shaft ready to go in. So I'm getting ready to put the coupler on, and I just wanted to show you a couple things. I sanded the flange on the transmission with 320 sandpaper. Same thing here. There was a little bit of oxidation buildup, and I wanted to make sure there was nothing that would throw off alignment, even though we're talking such a small amount. And then I took a wire bristle brush on a drill and cleaned the inside of the coupler off. And then I sanded the end of the shaft with 600 grit sandpaper. So now I'm going to put this on. Okay, so you can see here that I've got the coupler, and because I've done all my cleaning, it moves around nicely. This is like the greatest coupler as far as safety is concerned. So it has a pin that goes all the way through the shaft. It's been drilled. In addition to that, it has 2 bolts that clamp on the shaft. It's keyed, and it has a set bolt. So let me show you my hardware. So I just picked up 4 new grade 8 bolts with nylocks for the coupling. This is the set screw, which is drilled for seizing wire, which I'll show you how to use that. And here's the pin that goes through, and then here's the two clamping bolts. So I'm going to put that stuff on, and I'll be back in a second. So I have the coupler in. It's worked out really well getting nylox for this because I actually couldn't fit the nut and the locking washer on at the same time. So this just has the bolt with a regular flat washer and then a nylock locking nut on this side. I've tightened down the two clamping nuts. I have the set screw in. I have the pin in with both cotter keys. Now I'm going to use seizing wire for this bolt, and I'm going to show you how I do that. I keep seizing wire on the boat. I keep 51 thousandths and 41 thousandths each wire. And the reason I do that is I have this tool here. Sorry, I don't remember the name of it, but it allows you to make hose clamps out of any size wire, and I use these two wires to do that. And it's just an emergency thing. I have plenty of spare hose clamps on the boat, but this is a great emergency tool if I need to seize something and clamp it down. But I also have my seizing wire plier, which I'll demonstrate here in a second. But this is the next step in the process. So how these pliers work is there's a cutter here, there's a gripper. It allows you to lock the gripper closed, and then there's this piece on the end that you can pull out that will spin the head of the pliers around. So clamp that. All right, 41 thousandths worked. So now I have it clamped. So I'm just going to put tension on it and pull this handle and see how that works. Do I have to tighten this down or something? Oh, there it goes. I don't know why that's not. There it goes. So you can see I'm spinning it down. I'm going to go around this pin. Put a little tension over here. A little more. A little more. A little more. And it's about as much as I can do. So I'm going to let this go. I'm going to unlock the handle now. And you can see I have this beautiful little spiral seize there. I'm going to use the cutters again. Come down here, cut, and then I'm going to fold this end out of the way so I don't cut myself on it. And then I'm going to rotate this back so you can kind of see. The wire is now tight, and there's no way that this bolt can loosen because the wire is holding it that way. So I'm getting ready to put the clamps on, and I just wanted to give you a little tip and trick. So the stuffing obviously goes in the cavity inside here. And when I tighten down these nuts, this squeezes the stuffing that's inside this cavity. But this piece and probably 2 inches of this underneath here is right against the shaft. So if you don't have the alignment of this just right, the pressure from the stuffing box against the shaft can build a lot of friction, which obviously is not good. So before tightening these clamps down, you get everything set up and you adjust this as best you can so that there's even movement all the way around and there's not any pressure that you're putting on the clamps to tighten it against the shaft. So I'm going to tighten these down right now and check it afterwards again. Just putting my gloves on because it's time to put the prop on. And if you remember from earlier in the video, the clearance right here is really, really tight. So it's going to be a little bit of a wrestling contest, but it's the last step. Everything else on the inside is done. Everything except the prop is on the outside is done, so there we go. So besides measuring the clearance for the Cutless bearing, which I can tell you is very, very, very small right now, and it spins wonderfully, the Cutless bearing project is done. Just so you know, this took me, I'm going to say 12 hours, something like that. But the quote I got was $3,341. So I would say that that was a good investment of my time deciding to do it myself. And I'm happy because I know it was done right. So with that, I'm going to end this video. I always appreciate you viewing, subscribing, commenting, and liking. Until next week, thanks again for viewing.